Aloha and welcome, future people, and all the people watching live today. It's good to see everybody in the chat. Today we're doing Truth in Movies, where we break down the esoteric and occulted symbolism that the movies leave to us in the form of breadcrumbs and Easter eggs and things like that, pertaining especially to our hidden history. So the movie that we're about to do right now is called Extinct. We're going to cover strange, mysterious islands, Fantazoids, weird creatures, extinct creatures, and even humans for a bit. So let's jump right into it. The movie starts off by showing you this logo called China Lion. This is not really a lion, right? It takes the form of a lion, but this is actually often in English called lion dogs. They call these lion dogs. I call them hellhounds. I believe that they're a form of Fantazoid that enters into our world during the apocalypse. But it says here that lion dogs, in English, a statue of usually a pair of lion-like creatures guarding the entrance to the honden, or the inner shrine of many Japanese Shinto shrines. So usually these are guardians, right? There's some sort of Fantazoid monster-like creature that's seen as guarding the entrance to the underworld, or to other realms, or to doors that lead to other realms. And that's how we're starting this movie off. I love how they give us little breadcrumbs right from the start. All right, let's see what else we got. So when we first start this movie, we see Charles Darwin, and he's out on his famous adventure, to the Galapagos. He's going to document all of the different strange animals and even some extinct ones. So it starts off, he says, "This morning we set sail for our next grand adventure, the Galapagos." What does that mean anyway, Galapagos? We should definitely check that out. So if we check out the meaning of Galapagos, they say it comes from the word tortoise. Okay, but why is the tortoise called Galapagos? So I want to know more. So let's dive into it. It comes from the root word gel. You see here, the Proto-Indo-European root word gel, or gel, or hiel, which is where we get the word yellow, the root for yellow and gold and stuff like that. It means to shine, right? So Galapagos. So gel, pag, Galapag, shining pag. What's a pag? So pag is another Proto-Indo-European root word that means to fasten. You see that? Pag. This is also the root for the word pag-on, or those from the pag, or the fastener, or the great beam, the great tent peg, the great vav, the great nail that connects the sky and the earth together during the apocalypse. And in the entire next eon that we're about to go into, when the blue beams of the world will shoot out and seemingly hold up the sky for us. But if you take a look at some of the related words that share in the same root word pag, we see it's also pak. It's also pronounced pak. So tupak literally means like two beams, which I thought was pretty interesting. It's also where we get the word pole, right? So pag means pole. So those of the pole are the pag-on, right? It also means stake, as in the main part of a cruciform shape. It does not mean cruciform, but it does mean the beam portion, or the stake portion of the beam. So gala means shining, pag means beam, shining beam, and then os just means strong. So a strong shining beam. Why were they called Galapagos, being a strong shining beam? Here's some other extensions to the word pag as well. In Sanskrit, you could see it's related to pasa, which is a cord or a rope, because that beam is seen as a spinning cord or a rope of light that goes up into the sky, that people climb up into other worlds and they see giants and stuff. Also, it can have, by extension, the meaning to fetter or to attach to something, right? That's why it's represented by the vav, or the nail, to attach to the earth specifically, to fix, to make firm, to make fast, or to make solid, pagos, which means a strong fixation, or a strong fixing into something, right? It also comes from pagina, which means column. So column and beam, etc. So Galapagos literally means shining, strong beam. So why are turtles called that, right? Well, it's not just turtles. It's specific types of turtles. If we take a look here, it says that in the Galapagos that they actually have expansive areas where giant tortoises live, right? Check this out. Giant tortoises in captivity have been known to live longer than 200 years. And there's every reason to believe that in the wild, they regularly hit the 300-year-old marker. That is the Galapagos. So my theory so far is that many of these creatures were not just named, based on just given a random name because it sounds nice, how we give random names today. The names back then were descriptors, and a descriptor of something that had a strong inward beam of light or life force, or some creature, could be humanoid, could be animal, that came from the island of the strong beam of light, tended to be immortal, or by comparison to a shorter lifespans, live a very long time. So that's one of my theories on why the island, or the turtle at least, was named Galapagos. And here's a really weird thing too. On the Galapagos Islands, it's filled with these tortoises. So I wonder how the tortoises got there in the first place. Can tortoises swim? Tortoises cannot swim. This island, the Galapagos, where Darwin went and found all these strange and weird creatures, one of them at least can't swim. And it's full of these huge, gigantic tortoises. How'd they get to the island, right? It's a mystery. Nobody knows. People have all kinds of guesses if you try to look it up and research it. But ultimately, I found zilch, nada, nothing, as to why these animals are on this island and how they could have gotten there, right? So let's take another look real quick at the Galapagos Islands. It says Darwin disembarked on the San Cristobal, 1835. And this is the island, or this is actually a rock on the island that he landed on, okay? So this is just offshore from the main island where he landed. This is called Kicker Rock. Look at that. Doesn't that look exactly like a foot walking on the water? It looks like a shoe, like a giant petrified titan foot or something. I don't know if it is or not. I'm just saying it's really interesting to see these types of rock anomalies, especially in areas that already have strange anomalies, like life on an island that has no business getting to that island, right? Here's another picture of it, which is a more beautiful version. I like this one myself. And I've actually seen these in other places in the world. Here's another one. It's like a giant foot rock, a giant petrified foot just stuck in the ocean. This one right here is off of Maya Bay, I believe. There's various examples of them around the world. Now, if you take a look at the island that he landed on, right, you see that there are volcanoes. It's a very volcanic area, the Galapagos, right? This one is the largest, or the one of the largest craters, right? Calderas, I should say, of any volcano anywhere in the world. I believe some say it's second, maybe third, as being the largest one, right? So if this is a volcano that allegedly goes down into the inner recesses or caverns of the earth, this is one of the biggest ones. Isn't that interesting? And now look at it. It looks like it's plugged up, right? It kind of looks like it's just filled up, plugged up, and it looks unnatural. That to me, and this is my perspective, but to me, I sense that shouldn't be filled. I feel like that should be open so that things can come and go from it. I'll get to where I'm going here in just a second. Second largest crater in the world, according to this website. We go back to, what's his name? Man, Darwin. Go back to Darwin. He says, whatever extraordinary creatures await me on these islands. Now, wait a minute. I want to go back to that one real quick, right? With the tortoise thing. There's many. I don't know if I took pictures of this to further expound upon it, but there are many creatures in the Galapagos that cannot swim. They have no earthly business being stuck on this island all by themselves. And we can't collectively, as the mainstream populace, we can't say that we brought them there, because if you look up, when this island was even discovered by the first humans, it was only around 500 years ago or less, right? I'm actually going to get into that in here in just a bit. So let's press forward. So we see this bird flying over the island. None of the islands in the Galapagos look like this one. This is an island that is made up to accentuate and to really stick out the volcano in the middle. Why? Because the volcano in the middle represents an inner earth entrance, specifically the one at the North Pole. However, I do believe that there are many, right? So it really wants to point out that there's a huge, steep volcanic tower on this island. Look at that. No volcano on Earth looks like that I have seen so far. This one is a very steep tall volcano, which is exactly how Rupus nigra is described in the legends. So we go back, we see all the little Galapagos turtles poking out of their shells all over the place. Now, while Darwin was there, it's alleged that he had discovered different species of animals that are now extinct, which is why he's featured in this movie, right? His discoveries included 4 different species of giant ground sloths. You've seen what a sloth looks like, right? Okay, they're not too intimidating, but if you ever see a picture of a giant ground sloth, I'll show you in a minute. Yeah, they look monstrous. Some of the largest land mammals ever to have lived, actually. He also discovered a gomphother, whatever that is, and the remains of an extinct horse. Let's check some of these out. This is a rendition of what the giant sloth might look like. You know what this kind of reminded me of when we were doing another breakdown about Fantazoids, and how we learned that in France, they had an infestation of a monster that looked just like that. And it was so bad that the king, Louis XV, I believe it was, sent everyone out on a literal monster hunt to find a creature that looks very much like this one in the drawings. So this is a giant ground sloth. In almost every depiction, whenever they put up these fossils, bones, I think they're casts. If they're brown like that, I don't think they're real, basically. But you see them in museums all over the place. They always have them standing up. Like they're supposed to be climbing, leaning up against some tree. This one is actually a rarer one that I found where it's down, standing up on its forelegs and back legs, right? So nobody knows what this actually looked like with the skin and the muscle and the bone and everything all together, what color it was, if it had fur or not. They have guesses at best, right? I believe in creatures called Fantazoids, which are otherworldly creatures that come up from the hollow portions of our world or down and float down from the opening in the sky during the apocalypse, right? I call them Fantazoids. So it's very likely to me that we could have Fantazoid bones scattered about, or the bones of giants, or the bones of other fantastic creatures that we no longer believe in because we haven't seen them for quite some time. Here is a picture of an actual rendition of this strange-looking elephant creature that allegedly was discovered by Darwin. It's called the Gomphotherium or something. Look at this thing. I already thought elephants were Fantazoid relatives. This thing has a face that opens up. Like, look at that. Isn't that insane looking? Look, I got another one, another artist rendition of it. This is a total alien creature, right? And you can see there is a close relationship. If this picture has any merit to reality, right? Then you could see it looks like it might, our modern day rhinoceroses and elephants and hippos and stuff might have a relationship there, right? And look how its face kind of splits open. Exactly how we talk about in some of these Fantazoid creatures that are depicted quite often in the movies, especially horror movies. All right, then we got this bird that keeps saying booby all over the place, right? It keeps going booby, booby. It's a blue-footed booby or something like that, right? And there's even a joke in the movie, somebody snickers because they say the word booby, right? And they pretend like they were snickering at something else. But why did they put that in here? I know that I've seen many people be very quick to just jump on like, all the Hollywood's perverted, so they just want to talk about boobies. They want to distract you or whatever. I don't think so. I think that there's an occult reason behind it. And it's because it represents the tit or the tet or the tot or the tot or the thoth. It's various ways to pronounce it, but basically it's an ancient symbol coming from ancient Phoenician it's a circle with an X right in the middle. And it's used to represent the middle of our world or the land at the middle of our world. Now, this bird that keeps saying booby happens to land right in the middle of an X in the middle of this road. This is an example of the Phoenician letter, just in case you want to check it out. It's exactly like the X-Men symbol, as well it should be, because it's directly related to getting powers after the apocalypse. All right, so then we are introduced and we meet the flummels. The flummels are these little donut-shaped creatures. We're going to learn a lot about them. And this flummel crashes into the booby. He crashes into this bird, and this weird-looking blue bird is stuck inside of this ringed creature, or circle creature, basically. They're hollow on the inside, right? Like little donuts. So he's stuck in the hole there, and he goes, booby, booby. Now, these creatures, are not real. At least I don't know if they're real. I've never heard of them or, seen, but they at least have a symbolic real element to them, right? And I'm going to tell you what I believe that is. I believe it's plasma. Okay. Plasma comes in many different forms and many different shapes, but these creatures specifically represent what is known as a toroidal field, or a torus, basically. And as you can see, this strange booby creature is basically going to be born out of the torus field. Why is that important to our hidden history? It's because we have many ancient creation stories, myths, and legends, especially those that come from Native America, that describe animals being born from the sky, animals falling down from the sky. They're heavenly animals. They're space animals. They're Fantazoids. So let's take a look. This first flummel, this gray one, his name is Ed. She goes, "What's up, Ed?" "Oh, that's embarrassing. Why is he named Ed? He's a little circle and his name is Ed." Well, Ed comes from the Proto-Indo-European root word that means to eat. So he's a circle that represents the eater. And he just ate an animal, basically, or it's inside of him, right? He's about to spit it back out. Just like Kronos, just like the circular god in the sky, or the heavenly god, or the halo god, etc. The sky god that sucks up all the inhabitants and the animals and everything and then spits them back out. So she pulls out this strange booby animal. These are real too, by the way. The blue-footed boobies. They're weird looking, but they're real. I don't like how they make them look stupid in the movie, though, right? It's very interesting, but that's another story. Anyways, so she says, "The other flummels are waiting for us." What does that even mean? The flummel, is that a real word? So this guy says, "So we're late." Well, what's the worst thing that could happen? These creatures, these two specifically, have to be late because they are responsible for an apocalyptic event in the movie. They're these holes or these circles that are responsible for the apocalypse, or at least their local apocalypse, right? Symbolically, it's the apocalypse of our world reflected back to us. So they have to be late, right? The apocalypse is always late. The apocalypse is never on time. I have theories about why that is, and I believe it has something to do with the earth growing during each apocalyptic cycle, and therefore it gets bigger each cycle. And if that's true, then it takes more time to fill up with pressure, which means that there's going to be more time before the pressure is released, causing an apocalyptic electromagnetic neutral point or shift. All right, so that brings us to the movie Extinct. I love it, right? We're going to talk about extinct ideas. We're going to talk about extinct animals. All right, so all these flummels are going around getting ready for this flower festival. They're picking all the flowers. They love flowers. Why? Well, ultimately, they represent plasma. I'll explain that, more as we go. But plasma helps things to grow. It brings things to life, right? So they're collecting all of these various flowers for this flower festival. Now, their flower festival in the movie is basically akin to all of our traditions that we have forgotten their origins, all of our holy days, or days that are to be set apart from all of the rest of the days. That's why they're holy. They're set apart. The reason that they're set apart is because our ancestors knew the times. They understood the times where it was more likely for catastrophe to strike. And so they set up these meetings so that their family members would be or be more likely to be in a safer area, indoors or underground with candles lit, etc., right? So that's basically what they're doing there. They jump up, they're grabbing all the flowers and stuff. They say the countdown to the flower festival has begun. The flower festival represents symbolically the apocalypse. It's when our world goes into bloom. Okay, right now we live in a dying world. Okay, there's beauty here. There's life to behold. I love it. However, compared to the world that is to come, this world's dying and on the verge of death and needs to be brought back to life, which is what the apocalypse does. All right, so the flummels come up and they're like, "Hey, we got these flowers, but the ones we got are different. They're dynamic." So they represent the apocalypse that's on the way, right? And they have these different flowers that they're bringing to the festival. symbolically, that means that after the apocalypse, all of your flowers, all of your plant life and your flora will bloom differently. They're going to be weird looking. That's because the conditions in our world change, and so does life. You know, it's going to reciprocate that, especially the plant life. They're going to bloom in totally different ways under a red sky. Then he says, weird. The flowers, you, your brother, all weird. That's right, because this flummel over here represents like our world today, basically, and these two flummels represent the world to come. She says, or this flummel says, the eater, what was his name? Ed. He says, I'll be in one of the most important spots at the festival because I've been chosen to be the friend at the end. He's the friend at the end. So these are going to be our friends at the end. They're also going to be our friends at the beginning, as you'll see at the end of the movie. That's the exact same thing. These are little plasma torus fields, essentially. And they're going to be our friends. I'll get more into that in just a minute. So she says, or he says, Op, I love you. So the boy's name is Ed, which means to eat. That's where we get our word eat from, actually. Or we used to say et, right? And now we say ate, et, etc. He says, Op, I love you. His sister's name is Op. What does Op mean? Well, we look it up and it comes from ops, the eye. The Proto-Indo-European root word is oku, and it means to see. So she is an eye and he is a mouth or an eater, right? Both plasma apocalypse symbolism of the hole that opens up during the depressurization in our sky, when the sky blows out above the North Pole and it sucks everything up, eating it. Also, it goes dark. So the only thing that is seen is this eye of God, this red eye of God up there in the sky. And she happens to be red too. She says, but they basically, they're having some problems. And he's like, yeah, we've had a lot of bad moments. And she says, think of those sweet, sweet occasional ups instead of those downs, right? I feel like this is really good advice. I know it's not the most important part of the movie, but maybe it is. She's talking to us and she's saying, instead of focusing on all the bad that comes, right? All the lies, all the deception in our world, and what happens as the world degrades from paradise and from the golden age. Look, think about the good times. Think about the ups. Why? Because that's what we have to look forward to. If it happened in the past, it's bound to happen in the future. And besides, you need to stop living in the past, she says. And that's what we need to do. We need to look to the future, right? Now, we can have a better idea and more hope for the future if we better understand the past, which is why we're going over this. This little kid, Flummel, comes up to her and says, I just wanted to say I like that spin move you do. And she goes, oh, thanks. I call it the op pop. So the eye pop, a spin move. The eye pops is what she calls it, right? Why is that? That's because there's a circle in the sky and it's the sky literally popping open. So her little move is called the op pop, or to pop the eye, basically, right? To pop open the sky. And then this dude's the guy who's kind of the leader of the Flummels. They made a little Flummel flower of him or something. And he says, and as always, I and the Grand Flower Flummel will lead us right to the top of the mountain to celebrate. Why? Why are they going to the top of the mountain? That's like, you know what I mean? Why is that even a part of this? That doesn't need to be done at all. They don't even go to the top of the mountain in this movie whatsoever. They go inside of the mountain. So it's interesting that they're basically indicating to us, symbolically speaking, or not, that during the apocalypse, some may want to go to the top of a certain mountain, right? Being that one is representative of Mount Meru. So she says, I've got an idea. They show you the mountain. She goes up to the mountain. They're starting to traverse the mountain looking for these wild special flowers that they can't find anywhere else. Well, that mountain is located on a secret island that is on the maps. Some of our older maps. I'll show you some examples too. The Four Lands at the North Pole. And that area is said to be magical. That area is said to have strange mythic creatures, giants, little people. I forgot what you call them, little tiny people, and really strange plant life too. So this guy says, I finally understand why this is called the forbidden, don't go out there, it's way too dangerous zone. Now, symbolically, if they're talking about the North Pole and the region and the magical island at the North Pole, I just use the word magical. Really, it's really electromagnetic in nature, but to many, it's magic. And that is the forbidden, don't go out there, it's way too dangerous zone right now. Right now, it's been put into our head, just like in the Truman Show, when they're showing him since birth why it's dangerous for him to leave the little harbor island that he lived on. They do that to us, and they tell us why it's dangerous to go to Antarctica or to the North Pole. And basically trying to persuade you to keep from going way before you even come up with the idea to go. Excuse me. All right, so she's looking around for special flowers, and she looks down and sees this huge flower. So she wants to go down and get it. She goes all the way down to it, and this is a special flower, so they zoom into it. Now, let's take a look at the symbolism just in the flower that they zoom in on itself, right? As the flower starts to open up, you can see it's got the little cross section there in the middle, slightly broken, slightly twisted. That's because there is the hole in the sky that opens up and the plasma swirls in, right? One cycle, it swirls one way. The next cycle, it swirls the other way. It reverses, as does the jet stream and likely the path of the sun changing direction and rising in the west and setting in the east, etc., right? So this is basically the eye of God that you're looking up into symbolically in the movie. It opens up and all this plasma golden light, or gel, if we remember the Proto-Indo-European root word, gel, right? All this gel light streams out of this flower. And inside of the flower, look at that pure white light. If that represents the sky opening up and then the pinkish, purpley kind of plasma around it, right? The other side of it is showing you that that would be space. Space would not be black. Space would be bright and luminous and exactly what you would expect of the heavens above, right? All right, so she goes down closer to the flower. The plasma, basically is what it is from the flower, starts to suck her in, and she gets sucked into this flower. And you could see her just kind of getting it in there, and then her brother's tied to her, so he gets sucked in too. Which is, if I could flip this upside down, you would see. They do that a lot in the movies. They invert things, or they flip them upside down, or they make it look right side up when it's really not supposed to be like that. But this is the sky symbolically opening up and sucking people up into it, just like we've talked about many times. And then it closes up. All right, now what happens when they get sucked in past this flower? Symbolically, if they are in space. I've talked about this theory many times. There are what I call or refer to as plasma conduits out there in the heavens, out there in the fractalverse, out there in the Elysian fields, right? And I also have pondered whether or not that actually looks like the inside of a brain, with synapses and electrical conduits that go from neuron to neuron. And we live as the who's, as little tiny specks inside of that mind of God, right? So let's see if we can pick up on any of that symbolism as they go through this portal, right? At first, we do see some sort of conduits, some string-looking stuff in the background there. Okay, it could be perceived as such, and then they do these close-ups where you can just see through the circle, right? That's like you glimpsing into space from the top of our world, from the opening in the sky, right? And then you can see what's beyond. Plasma conduits, right, that connect realm to realm. If this is true, that means that no planet is separate from any other planet, that all those so-called planets out there are really hubs. They're hubs of information that are connected to one another through these conduits, through these synapses and stuff like that. So they show you another one that, it could be, I don't know. But then all of a sudden they go through this other portal in this area and boom, they're inside of some other dimension, right? Look closely at what's in this particular area. Those look exactly like neurons or something microscopic, right? Doesn't it? That's pretty much inside of something, most likely the brain or spinal cord is my guess. But they're definitely inside of that. This is showing you that they're tiny. Now, I also want to point out that your blood cells and other parts are also toroidal in shape. They're like pallets, right? And this is exactly like them flowing through the bloodstream or whatever. going to wherever they need to go. This is also symbolic of what happens if you were to get sucked up and eaten by Kronos during the plasma apocalypse. If you were to survive, you would probably see something very similar to this until you got to your destination, or a hub like this one that's shown to you, where it opens up, it has its own little apocalyptic event, and you fly into it. This one's showing you more of the microscopic fractalverse above, basically. And then there is shot outwards. Now look behind them. You can see that there's this sort of grail shape, right? This is a toroidal field around the torus. And then they get shot out of another flower, right? These are the flowers of life. It's the tree of life, etc. And that's why, well, I'll get to it in a minute, but they end up in China, in modern day China. So they look up, they see skyscrapers and everything. This first flummel, she sees a bunch of apples, and she goes and she's like, oh man, apples. Yes, I love this. That could have been any fruit. It could have been anything. It could have been anything but apples, right? They chose to put an apple in here to give you more context as to the esoteric side of the story, what they're talking about. These creatures represent the golden apples of ancient lore and legend, that many a hero went out and ventured upon quest after quest to try to retrieve these golden apples, because these were the food of the gods. If you ate these golden apples, then you would be imbued with vitality, longer life, etc., strength, stuff like that. So they landed in Shanghai. It's kind of hard to see right there, but if we zoom in, you can see that the sign says, I love Shanghai. Now, they were just sucked up into the sky and taken away, right, by the sky god, which in my lingo means kidnapped. They were taken without wanting to be taken or whatever. So if we look up the word Shanghai, in our slang, basically, not the original, but in slang, it's a nautical term, and it means to take somebody and put them aboard a ship by force, often with the help of liquor or a drug, right? Which is also something that happens during the apocalypse, is people are kind of drugged because there's nitrous oxide clouds floating about and stuff. All right, anyway, so they get shanghaied, basically. They get kidnapped, taken, sucked out of their world and put into another one. Then this one is falling down a sign, and he gets sort of electrocuted on all of the circular shapes. No reason for that to really even happen, you know what I mean? Because the outside of a neon sign doesn't tend to electrocute people. They wanted to add this in there to show you that they are electrical phenomenon, right? Symbolically, they're giving you little elements to show you what these flummel things are. And what they are is a torus. They're a torus shape. I'll show you more about the torus in just a bit. She says, well, they meet this little furry dog, right? And the dog's going to be like their guide in the future. And he says, well, let's start with the basics. I'm Clarence, and I'm a dog. Well, Clarence is one of the main characters, so let's see what his name means. It comes from clair os, which means bright, shining, or clear. So this white dog, right? Oftentimes the white animals are the ones you want to look for in the movies, because they often represent creatures from another world, usually called the fallen ones. Okay, or white devils, if you will. But they are Fantazoid white. Those creatures from space tend to be described as being very brilliantly white, even with a shine or a shimmer to them, right? So that's sort of Clarence, or Clarence. That's what his name equates to. And also Clarence is a title in England. It's a ducal title of the English and British royal family. So we've got two connections here, right? The British and the royal family, they claim lineage to basically the gods. That's why they are kings and queens. They claim divine right, meaning that, hey, I'm related to one of those gods that used to rule, so I get to rule too. Right? It's in my DNA, or whatever. That's their excuse. So they claim to be related to the gods, so they feel that means that they can just rule over everybody else, because that's what their relatives did. So it's interesting that he's named that. So he represents those fallen ones who have come into this world to try to change things around to suit their own desires, basically, right? All right. Moving forward, they see a donut shop and they're like, oh my God, we have to rescue all the flummels, right? They hit the window, the smack, and then they do this, right? They got the arms up. This is called the squatter man symbol, right? If you see ancient pictograms or drawings in the rock and stuff, usually a stick figure has its arms up into the air and it's sort of squatting out with its legs separated like they are on the window right there. Now, let's take a look. This is what it looks like whenever you have a beam of plasma. It creates a toroidal field around it. You see in the middle there? See how on the right, we've got these two circles. These represent the flummels, right? And that's where they live, where the beam is, on either side of it. It's on either side because it creates this sort of vortex of energy that goes around it like that. But when looked from a linear perspective, the most of that is seen in little circles off to the side. So oftentimes this stick figure or this stick god or goddess in the sky is seen as, this is interpreted in so many different ways. Those can be eyeballs. This could be the face of an owl. This could be somebody with two balls under their armpits, which there's actually legends that say that the earth was created out of the armpits of a titan. I think that's a Norse legend. Anyways, this is many different things. We're gonna actually touch on this some more in a bit, but this is like a 3-dimensional rendering of it. So if you were to be able to look at it from a different perspective, now you get a little bit more information, right? Instead of like this, you can see it from this way, and you can see that it's donut shaped right there in the middle with the bell on either side. All right, so the dog is like, oh, they're just donuts, don't worry about it. And then he's about to take a bite, and they're like, oh my God, he's going to eat one of us. He's going to eat a flummel. This is appropriate, symbolically speaking, because you've got the being or the dog, the god backwards, right? I'm going to come back to that word. But the white dog or god about to eat one of the flummels, which represents the food of the gods or the golden apples, etc., right? Or plasma, right? Electromagnetic energy, in order for him to live longer, because that's what they usually did. It increased your vitality. This is the type of thing that you would eat. People didn't need to eat physical food or whatnot. They had the manna from heaven that would rain down onto them. So it literally squirts out jelly and rains down onto the flummels themselves, and they're freaking out because they think it's blood. That's appropriate because this has been described as blood, okay? Symbolically, if we're talking about these creatures representing cosmic plasma discharges, right? What happens when you have that beam shoot up violently from the earth? Boom! One, it's going to, everywhere it shoots out, it's going to make a boom. It's going to make a huge loud sound, right? After it does that, it's going to react with the atmosphere, and it's going to shoot out energetic raindrops. I don't know how to describe it, right? I haven't really come up with a unique word for that, but it's manna, it's ambrosia, it is this viscous, gooey, oozing, slimy sort of liquid, or you could say jelly, right? Symbolically, it's basically the jelly of the gods, you could say, right? And it's also seen as being the blood of this savior type who is hung upon a tree in order to stop the apocalypse. So we see this stick figure person appear. They put their hands up into the sky, sort of fighting off the dragon tentacles of red plasma from above. And it is seen as sacrificing itself so that the apocalypse would stop and that we could live. And, you know, not all of humanity would be wiped out. And then all these drops that come down off of that creature are seen as its sweat, it's seen as its tears, and it's also seen as its blood. And then she takes a taste, and she goes, I have to admit, we're pretty delicious. So this is the movie basically saying, like, these are delicious if you were to eat a flummel. Not if you were to eat a furry little creature like that, but if you were to eat the plasma symbolically, it's plasma, and it would taste good, basically, is what they're saying. All right. So remember, gel means to shine. This is jelly. It's the exact same thing, basically. It means like a little shiny thing or a glimmering thing. Oftentimes things that shine or glimmer or sparkle or things like that, they have this root word, gel, which is gel, which is to shine. Look at some of these other words that are related to it. How about chlorine? 21 Pilots fans, sipping on straight chlorine, right? Glass, gild, gloss, gloat, chloris, gall, chlorophyll, chloroform, all these different pronunciations. Glow, to glow, gold, obviously. Lots of different ones. All right, so they go into this museum where there's this cardboard sign that says, become a member before it's too late. And then there's these strip of stickers, these little round stickers, and she slaps one on his head and it says member on it. Right there, she puts it right here. Now the sign says become a member before it's too late. And this is clearly a reference to the apocalypse, right? Not saying that there's merit to the official story of how the dinosaurs died or whatever, but I am saying they are telling you to get your dot before it's too late. That represents your pineal gland. That represents waking up, essentially, before it's too late. That's what the movie's trying to tell us. And then we get to the Hall of Death. Like, all these museums, they're creepy, man. But anyways, we've got our modern dinosaurs, which to me are Fantazoids, basically. I don't know if the bones were put together in the right order or not, but I definitely believe monsters roamed about the world until they were hunted down to extinction, and one day they'll all return. So they find the little version of themselves, because the flummels are extinct in the movie, so they have a little flummel setup. And he goes, this is the Hall of Extinct Creatures. Also kind of reminds me, I've referenced this a few times recently, but Dulce, New Mexico has a secret underground base, allegedly, and there's different halls, there's different levels to Dulce, and many other deep underground military bases and other deep underground areas that are off limits. They have these different levels. Well, one level is called Nightmare Hall, where they have what we would consider to be extinct creatures, or Fantazoids, or otherworldly monsters, basically. All right, so they start watching this movie that's explaining Charles Darwin in cartoon form in the movie. And in the cartoon, Charles Darwin says, right now, I'm studying the Galapagos, or the Galapagos, right? Where I've just discovered a previously unknown island. Okay, I got some deals with that one, okay? I don't like it whenever academics teach us stuff that's not true. Okay, so I don't like when movies do that. I don't like when anything does that. I'm a truth seeker, so the truth makes me happy. So who really discovered the Galapagos Islands? Fray Tomás de Berlanga. The world first heard about the Galapagos more than 470 years ago. The Dominican friar, Fray Tomás de Berlanga, Bishop of Panama, was the official discoverer, arriving on March 10th, 1535, well before Charles Darwin ever did. But let's get a little deeper into it, because it doesn't stop there. It says here that the islands were first mapped by a Flemish cartographer called Abraham Ortelius in 1570, and the map was called Theatrum Orbis Terrarum. Let me show you the map. Let's take a look at this map. Now, let's find the Galapagos. Boom. Pretty simple, easy. There's the Galapagos, there's Mexico, right? Here's South America, Peru. There's the little Galapagos Islands right there. Okay, but what else do we have on this map by this famed cartographer, right? Who I assume is an expert in cartography and doesn't just make up bullcrap and put it on his maps for the king and the queen to send out their armadas, etc. There is a monster on this map, a sea monster. And that's not the only one. Over here in his map, we've shown you many maps like this where they put real sea monsters, okay? Not whales, and they were just stupid back then, and they didn't know what a whale was, so in their imagination, they thought it had two spouts and frog legs, and, no, I'm not going with that, okay? I feel like people were smarter the further back in time we go, right? Maybe they didn't have the same technology that we do now up to a certain point, in which case it was probably better technology if you go back far enough. But anyways, they put monsters onto these maps, right? They're not allowed to do that if the monsters don't exist. Okay, imagine that in modern days, right? Doing that would not be acceptable. Let's check out some other stuff on this map that he has here. They've got Tartaria listed on the map over here. They've also got California is pretty much split away from the rest of the United States with huge rivers flowing throughout. This is an official map. And at the top, let's zoom out. At the top, there is what is known as Terra Incognita, or unknown land. This is the North Pole lands. You see how there's 4 lands there divided by these rivers, right? That is the land that we're talking about at the North Pole. So there is a reference here going on. We're going to find some more references too, but it doesn't stop there. The Galapagos weren't even discovered by that guy. The Galapagos, it said, was discovered by the Incas, right? By a guy named, appropriately, Tupac. Interesting, right? The two beams. Not that it means that exactly. But anyways, the Incas were there over 500 years ago, allegedly between 1471 and 1493. So I don't like how history goes. I don't like how we, certain classes and races of humans, I don't like how you guys are handling history. I don't like how you're putting your stamp on it. I don't like how you're stretching it to make it sound like you're the discoverer or you deserve some sort of notoriety or fame or whatnot. I don't like that. I don't like it whenever the schools follow suit. So let's recap. George Washington did not have wooden teeth. Columbus did not discover America. Okay, maybe he discovered it for himself, but he certainly, there's many people who came here way before Columbus's ass. Excuse me, but I hate the Columbus story. He also did not prove that the earth is a different shape, okay? He didn't prove any kind of shape to the earth whatsoever. He went from like this continent to this continent, from here to here, okay? So George Washington did not have wooden teeth. Columbus did not discover America. As you can see, Magellan did not circumnavigate the world. I'm just telling you the truth, okay? That did not happen. He died way before he could even complete his little journey around, okay? He was actually murdered because the natives saw what he was really doing and decided he was a bad guy, and they killed him. So there's a totally different story than the official ones that we're told. And those are the ones I like to talk about. So they talk about how he named this creature Flammelius hidella. Now, I'm going to tell you what that translates to. That's a sort of a made-up Latin name for the flummels, their technical name. But flummel equates to flame. It is the exact same root word as llama, okay? Llama comes from flamma, which means flame or fire, or the part of fire that you can see. And then hidelia means hidden. So this shape, and this, by extension, this creature means hidden flame, hidden plasma, hidden light, etc. by extension, right? Now they continue on. It says Dr. Chung discovered these flowers. So Dr. Chung discovered these little portal flowers. Let's see what Chung means. They got Dr. Chung in here. And it says Chung means, it's Zhang Chong. It's pronounced in many different ways. And it means, essentially, depending on the spelling, to open up, to spread, a sheet of paper, classifier for flat objects. That's pretty interesting. I'm going to come back to that one. Sheet or classifier for boats. So to open up, to spread out, right? So when the sky opens up, this portal is seen, the flower is seen, etc. Basically is why Dr. Chung is in there and why he discovered the flower. And then the dog is like, and he used them to travel through time. Exactly like, if you're a Fortnite fan like I am, they've got many instances of flowers or trees that act as portals or gateways to other worlds and other dimensions. This is an example in Fortnite where they had this flower at the center of the Fortnite map, which represents the North Pole. Often. It usually does, right? But they got this flower in the middle of the Fortnite map, right where what's known as the 0 point, which is this little circle in the sky right there. The 0 point has a flower that comes out of it. Also, Pan's Labyrinth has a portal tree that opens up. Also in, what do you call this movie? The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Part 3 or something like that, right? They had this portal tree that opens up, just like in Sleepy Hollow, where they had the portal tree that leads you to another world, just like in Alice in Wonderland, where they had the portal tree, or just like in, the list goes on and on and on, right? The Princess Bride, etc. Anyway, to answer all of your problems, the answer to all of your problems is right through here, the dog says, and then they show you the flower. They're talking to us often in the movies. They're saying the answer to all of our problems is this flower, or what that flower represents is a clean slate to our world. It is called the apocalypse. Also, that's the portal if you'd like to leave. You don't like this place? Guess what? You're free to go. All you have to do is figure out how, and I'm here to help you out. So he says, so come on. The movie is actually urging you on. Come on, go. Like, let's go to this flower. Let's find the flower of life, the tree of life, etc. So they jump into the flower and they go back through the plasma conduits. Also symbolically in the movies, sometimes it's portrayed as like water slides, right? Because you sort of slide through it and stuff. Chutes and ladders and stuff like that, right? So they get back to that huge torus field and he says, welcome to the time terminal. And then that's the time terminal right there. We have that here in our world. I think probably many worlds have this as well. And it's right at the middle. I went ahead and I added this to it. That's not in the movie or anything. So I wanted to show you the torus shape and how it creates the torus field around it, right? Or the field that is around that torus field. So that torus donut shape is in the middle. And what that does is it acts as like a shield for the plasma because it's magnetic in nature, basically. So this can move the plasma. This can change the shape of the plasma. So the plasma shrinks right there where that little Z pinch is. They call that a Z pinch, right? So that's where it's being pinched together before it shoots back out. And plasma likes to shoot right through these torus fields at high speeds. Then they go to a map. This map blew my freaking ever-loving mind. I had to pause the movie. I had to pace around and think about some stuff when they showed me this map. I'm excited right now looking at it. Let's check this map out. I'm excited. Look at this map right in the middle. So first of all, let me acknowledge something. They have little portals, little flower portals on a real map of the real world. They could have made this a different world if they wanted to. And they put all these little flower portals everywhere in specific locations, right? So you've got one in like the Galapagos area over here. There's the Galapagos. You got one in the Hawaii area over here. Or maybe it's over here somewhere. You got a big one right there. There's a few areas where there's really huge ones. And then right in the middle of the map is the torus field itself right there. In the middle of the map. So symbolically at the middle of our world. I know that's not the middle of the world right there, but where it should be, there is one of those portal flowers. The middle of the world should be right here, or the top of the world, the North Pole land that we've already looked at, right? So I superimposed a real map on top of it. It looked the exact same. Just had a little bunch of flowers. There you can see like the Holy Grail symbolism. That's the cup of Christ, or the cup of light, really is what it is. And here is an example of how we create this, or how we recreate this anomaly or this effect so that we can control and manipulate plasma. This is a machine that has been created to try to institute fusion, to fuse elements together, right? Because plasma has the ability to do that. It has the ability to pull elements apart, right? To create looser bonds, and then it has the ability to pull elements together. But that's a different video. All right, let's continue on. Hey, 210 people watching right now. It's good to see all of you. This right here is called a tokamak. A tokamak. Let's check this out. It's the exact same thing. So right here would be like your beam. That would be the bottom portion of the chalice or the cup, right? And there's the top portion right there. And this is a real world example. It says that the tokamak is a device which uses powerful magnetic fields to confine plasma in the shape of a torus. The tokamak is one of several types of magnetic confinement devices being developed to produce controlled thermonuclear fission power. So this is not fantasy whatsoever. It's just cartoonified reality. That's all. Here's another example, many examples of the torus field, which is natural and in every area and aspect of our lives, right? From the apple that we see featured in the movie so often, where they're eating the apple or the fruit, right? This is symbolically the fruit of the Garden of Eden or the Tree of Life, to blood pallets, little blood cells or whatever right there, right? To the fields of the earth itself, depending on how you view the earth. So they go back to that map and he says, leads to a different time flower somewhere in history. So each one of these marked areas on this fictitious cartoon is allegedly a portal, or has a portal, which may be areas where volcanoes are. I haven't double checked all these little spots on here, but I believe that they should, if they correlate to reality, that each one of these should have a corresponding cave system, a cavernous opening, or some sort of volcano or something. So I'll have to double check that another time. Unless one of you want to, and then share it with me. That'd be awesome. All right. So the torus field starts spinning around. Something happened. It's out of control. And it starts sucking everything up into it. So they're trying to hold on to stuff, but they're getting pulled toward this symbolic tree of life. They're getting pulled up into this vortex, which is where the vortex happens, right? When the world depressurizes, there's a huge vortex. There's a giant tornado like you've never even seen, but it goes around the Arctic Circle essentially. So it's very, very, very big. It's a hurricane, it's a tornado, it's indescribable. It is a worldwide tempest. So everything's getting sucked up. That little dog, that little white dog, is going to get sucked up and caught into the torus field and be pushed into another world as a slider, as a fractalverse traveler, right? And so it's appropriate because that's what those white beings typically did, is they jump from world to world and they go about, changing things on those worlds. So he lands in this snow world, or this snow area of Earth, in some other time. And he meets this guy who says, "I'm Ernest Shackleton, head of the Ernest Shackleton expedition." And throughout this movie, whoever this dude is continues repeating his name so much, I was forced to look it up. I was forced to find out what the story of Ernest Shackleton is, who this guy is. He's very famous. His expeditions were famous before Byrd, before Admiral Byrd, right? So let's learn a little bit about Ernest Shackleton. Actually, before I get into that, I would like to I'm going to freestyle Ernest Shackleton real quick, okay? Irregular Absolution says, "I want to get sucked up." Well, best of luck to you, buddy. I do too. One of these days. I just got to find out the right way. Anyway, so Ernest Shackleton. First and foremost, this is Antarctica, or this represents Antarctica. There was a man in the early 1900s, right? 1800s, maybe late 1800s. I can't remember. But his name is Ernest Shackleton, and he led an expedition that was named Nimrod. Or maybe that was the name of his ship. Isn't that weird, though? They named the expedition. Let me look it up real quick. Nimrod Expedition. There it is. It was called the Nimrod Expedition. So they named their expedition to Antarctica. They were going to try to cross Antarctica, which, some people don't feel is super possible. So he's going to try that. That didn't work out for him, okay? So he wasn't able to do it. But it's an interesting story. Let me tell you the official story, okay? So the official story, he did his little Nimrod expedition, came back, and then he did a second expedition. And on that second voyage, his ship was stuck in the water because the water started to freeze around his ship, and then his ship was stuck in the water, like ice all the way around his ship. His men got out. Allegedly, they were trying to dig out the ship, but the ice kept on freezing, before they just kept freezing right back up every time they pulled it apart. The ship got stuck there. The story goes that Ernest Shackleton and his entire crew lived. They just decided to live on the ship, stuck in the ice. They couldn't get it out or anything. So they're like, all right, let's set up shop until spring comes around and hopefully this ice melts. So the story goes, the official story is that they lived on this ship, stuck on an iceberg out in Antarctica for like over a year. This is really interesting. That's the official story. Okay. They got pictures and stuff, right? Which is great. It's awesome. There's interesting pictures that I've seen of the ship stuck in the ice and everything. And I believe that the ship was stuck in the ice, but I also think that something else may have happened. Anyways, that's Ernest Shackleton. He ended up escaping, right? Him and his crew ended up escaping, not dying out stranded on an iceberg with like whatever they had on their ship. And they ended up staying there. All their dogs were fine. Their dogs actually had babies and stuff, turned into sled dogs. And he was able to somehow get off of that iceberg, go like 500 miles away to the closest island, get help, come back, get rescued. And here's something interesting. They just found this ship. The ship sank to the bottom of the ocean. They allegedly just found it this year. They found Ernest Shackleton's ship at the bottom of the ocean. There's pictures and videos and stuff online. Now, check this out. Here's an interesting thing. Sir Ernest Shackleton, pardon me, in his Mr. Dufresne, if you please, in his 1919 book called South, described his belief that an incorporeal companion, that means plasma, spirit, joined him and his men during the final leg of their Antarctic journey. So he felt like there was a ghost, some sort of ghost-like presence that was there with them on this journey. Here's a picture of his ship, allegedly stuck in the ice. Now check this out. One of his crewmates came back. His name's Douglas Mawson. He's an Aussie. And Douglas comes back and it says this about Douglas. Australian explorer Douglas Mawson, not usually known for his flights of fancy, penned a Hollow Earth-inspired short story entitled Bathbia in 1908 during his time with Shackleton's Nimrod expedition. This dude wrote a book allegedly on board the ship when they're stuck on an iceberg in Antarctica, freezing to death, wrote a book that's allegedly fiction about a bunch of sailors that travel to the central parts of the inner hollow earth portions, right? I can't even talk. I'm so excited right now. It's because this is all making sense to me. Anyways, during his time with Shackleton's Nimrod expedition, a group of Antarctic expedition members climbed down to the center of an enormous volcanic cone where they encounter a humid environment abounding in plant and animal life. Here's a theory. What if every volcano, or many of them with exception, at one time was not full of lava? What if at one time every volcano was empty and had light, cold plasma emanating from it from the inner earth regions, and that's the time when animals and people and stuff could come up and come out or go in? And maybe that could account for all of these strange islands full of mammoths and crap that have no business belonging on these volcanic islands, right? Mammoths, giant iguanas, weird, strange creatures, huge turtles that can't swim, right? Nobody has a really good reason for it, except for trying to say like, oh, maybe the ocean froze and they walked across at some point and then it totally melted and then they got stuck. Okay, nah. Maybe they came up from inside of the earth, and that's why they are all gigantic, and that's why they all look weird, and that's why they all live for so long. Anyways, so they go back to this time central place, or at the tourist field or whatever, and they see these strange creatures looking at them, right? I'm going to talk to you about these creatures. So this one, I forgot the name of it off the top of my head, but this is like an extinct animal, and this is an artist's rendition of it. It's got this, it's like a camel, llama looking thing with like an elephant trunk, right? But if you look it up, they're not even sure it had an elephant trunk. They, like I said, they just guess at a lot of this stuff, especially when it comes to their physical outward appearance. They had a few bones, right? So check this out. Oh, here's the official name for it. Let me try to pronounce it. These things are called macrocosm or macrocosm. Macrocosm fossils were first collected on the 9th of February, 1834 at Port St. Julian in Patagonia, Argentina by Charles Darwin, when the HMS Beagle was surveying the port. As a non-expert, he tentatively identified the leg bones and fragments of spine that he found. And he said, basically, it's some large animal. I fancy a mastodon, right? So, Naga Gato, hey, welcome. So, they find a leg and they find a piece of spine or a couple of pieces of spine, and all of a sudden, they know exactly what it looks like. It looks like that, right? That's pretty much kind of what they do, right? You know, they just find broken pieces of things and they're just sticking them together. I don't know if it's to distract us from the truth of how vicious and creepy and weird these creatures really looked, right? To try to make them look more like docile modern animals or something. I don't think they looked like that. I think they looked monstrous, right? I'm sure there was good ones, but I'm sure they looked not so Pixar cute, if I'm to describe it like that. All right, so then we also have Bernie, the Tasmanian tiger. He's portrayed as this conspiracy theorist in the movie. Lo and behold, he's right about everything that he theorizes about. And Alma is a Meridian Galata. That's not what they call those, so I'm not sure why they call them a Meridian Galata. I'm not going to get into that because I don't know if that's the right word for that. And then, of course, we have a triceratops. So literally a dinosaur, an actual dinosaur is there. So we have all of these extinct creatures. That's why the movie's called Extinct, right? And they're all in this hub. Where is this hub? If this represents real life in the real world, right? Where would this be? So right now, Bernie steps up and says, now, we call this strange place home. We call this strange place home. And honestly, we prefer not to roam. But now they're about to do a song and dance. So we know staying here feels like a crime. Now they're doing this whole song about this place where they live, right? And the entire song is all about how they choose not to leave this place. And they tell you why. They say, we know staying here feels like a crime when we could explore any place in time, right? So they stay here when they could be out exploring and venturing and stuff. What's the reason for that? They say, so you can kill time here, wherever they are. They can just kill time and chill and not worry about dying. Or time will kill you out there. Time will kill you out there. You can kill time in here, which what they're saying is where they are extends their life. Naga, thank you. Where they are extends their life. And if they leave that place, time will kill them. Their lifespans will start shrinking and they will die, right? That place is the North Pole. Now, listen to what Bernie says. Aliens, Bigfoot. And then, I'm not going to say this part, but I would like to just make it a little bit bigger because look what he's holding on his back, right? I'm just going to let you read that. Boom. And then he's holding this, and then he flips it all the way sideways. And I'm going to tell you, he was right about everything that he talked about or theorized about in this movie. The movie portrayed him as a truth teller, right? They try to make it look like he's just a wacko conspiracy nut or whatever, but he literally was right about everything in the movie. We're going to come back to that because he's actually going to comment on that later in the movie. So get crushed, blown up, or fall deathly ill, or stay safe here, where time stands still. If you go down into the inner recesses of the earth or up into the heavens, outside of the pressurized atmosphere here on the surface level, the conditions change and allows you to live for what feels like an eternity, comparatively speaking, right? If you were able to live where they live, inside of the earth or outside of the sky, you would look back on these times right now, presently, and you would just see yourself as a child. This would be your childhood. No matter if you had a beard like me or gray hair or you're old and wrinkled, you would look back and you would see a childhood, right? Which means the world is... All right, so it says it could happen any year in any hemisphere. They're talking about the apocalypse. It could happen any year, any hemisphere. If you want to stay safe, it's best to stay right here. They're talking about Hodmimi's Holt. They're talking about the Tree of Life. They're talking about the Garden of Eden. They're talking about the land at the North Pole that has an inner Earth entrance there. If you want to be safe, it's best to be where they are right now. And then they show you a picture of exactly where they are, the place where the Torch field is. If you want to stay safe, it's best to be there. And then Bernie goes, not to mention, you may be taken by body snatchers. Look at the book he's holding onto, by the way. Chapow. You see that? So that is the plasma volcano, the triangle, the eye in the sky in the middle. I've done a whole video on that, and then the light emanating from the eye as well, right? And he says, not to mention, he could be taken by body snatchers. Body snatchers are real in my book, okay? That's not my book, but I have my own book. Literally. And body snatchers are real. Okay. It's called being possessed, essentially. And I talk about it quite often. And then he also says boogeymen, cyclopses, all things that are fairy tales and totally not true. But in this movie, we find out they totally are. They tell you, they're blunt to your face, looking right at the camera, and they say, those are real. Let me just double check on the chat. Everything good? 232 people watching. Wow, I'm honored. It's good to meet you all. I hope you have a good time. All right, so next, the flummels go back in time and they start sort of, manipulating history, accidentally gathering these artifacts from the past. This spear is launched by this caveman type guy, and it goes right at the flummels or right at the circle. There's always going to be a pike, a spear, an arrow, something straight and usually pointy that hits a circle. That symbolism of the bullseye shot or whatever is the image of perfection. Why is that? It's because that is the archetypal image that we have in our mind of what rescues us, of the goodness that enters into this world when the blue vril or the blue energy or inner earth energy shoots outward through these inner earth cavernous systems, and it shoots straight up to the sky because it's light. It goes straight, basically. It's plasma, right? So it shoots out and it goes up to that circle in the sky because it's directly above it. So you'll always go to see this kind of symbolism in the movies. And it hits it, bullseye, right in the middle, as well it should, because that's what it is representative of. And there's actually 2 of them, so keep that in mind. There could be 2 holes or 2 depressurization points above us. All right, so then they sort of turn it into like the first wheels, and the caveman sees that. So what they're trying to suggest is that they recommended, the wheel or the idea of the wheel to the caveman and thus changed history. Also, they went and they took Orville Wright's wrench, thus it's implied that they are changing history. So what this means is that plasma has something to do with these historic events, right? The Titanic, or also Titans, a light switch. He comes back and there's a light switch stuck inside of him. She can actually pull his tail and turn that light on and off. How's that possible? Because he's electricity, right? He's a torus field. He's made of energy. So you can put that light bulb right inside of him and it turns on. Just like Uncle Fester can put the light bulb inside of his mouth because he's electromagnetically charged or electrically charged, and you can turn a light bulb on. Excuse me. Oh, thanks, Chungus Khan. I appreciate you. I'm glad to see everybody's having a good time in the chat. And thanks for all of the likes and all that stuff, too. All right, so back to the movie. So the flummel finds another apple. This is in Bill Gates' house. At least that's what it's supposed to look like, right? Takes a bite of it. The guy's like, shh, this is a secret, right? This is the secret. The things that I talk about on my channel are secrets, okay? There are those groups out there that have sworn not to tell these secrets, but I have not. So I freely share them with you. Anyway, she takes a bite out of the apple, and he holds it up, and he gets the idea for his Apple logo, right? So they're influencing everything. He brings back these little Russian dolls, and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. What this is symbolically are people over time getting smaller and smaller and smaller. That's what our world does to anything that enters into it. Once it locks back up and the pressure starts to build once more, things start shrinking down every other cycle, right? All right. And then they come back another time with this Egyptian helmet. And she says, each place is more exciting than the last. And then he turns around and says, and more dangerous. So check this out. They're both wearing one hat. So what this is a double head or a double face symbolic element. This, and then you can see it here from the side, right? One face is facing one way. One face is facing the other way. I'll get to the dodo in a bit too. Hopefully. This is Janus. This is symbolic of the god Janus, the two-faced god. Let's take a closer look at this particular image of Janus. As you can see, we've got the torus field, which is Janus's head, which is the face of Janus. If I zoom in on this, look at the head, right? You've got the torus field there, boom. In the middle would be that donut shape, and here are the eyes, or one eye on one side for this face that's facing that way, one eye on this side for this face that's facing that way. And then you can see that there's a crescent moon on the top of his head. Also, right above the middle of our world, right above the North Pole, which is what people will see one day when they see an alignment between these three allegedly heavenly bodies. There's also the rod. He is also the rod god. There are many rod gods. I like to call them that. They're the god of poles, the god of rods, the god of columns, etc. That's, you know what I mean? It's a line, but it's important because those are the lines that touch the sky. Those are the sky beams. And he has a key to the portals that take you to other places. He's the key master. He is the god of doors, the god of portals to other worlds. This is an example of what you see above his head, right? This is just an artist rendition, but you see how there's a little crescent above his head, as there are with many different, Islam, there's many different religions and gods and stuff that are represented by this sort of shape of the crescent. Now, I have different theories about why that crescent is there, which I'll get into another time. But basically, I believe it's how the plasma is moving about above those holes when the world depressurizes and how it looks to us down here. This would be like the blue beam shooting up towards it. All right, here's another one I found too. You got a few different symbolic elements here in this picture. You've got the blue bird of happiness, which is the thunderbird, the blue beam that shoots up and spreads its wings or whatever when it hits the dome. This is literally the tree of life right here with the little olives or almond seeds, or, you know what I mean? It's seen as many different things, but these are the fruit of the tree of life. This is the stuff that coalesces and then falls down to the ground or whatever. He's got the chalice in his hand with serpents coming out of it, the double face. He's got the wings, the arms are holding up the sky, just like Atlas, etc. It's also the symbol of Hurley, right? If you're into these different kinds of surfer brands like I am. So it's definitely the Hurley element, the Janus face. It's also DC. If you flip it around, you can see that there's a star at the top. There's a dome, or there's a toroidal field. If you look at it like this, there's an opening at the top with a star. That's the North Star, or that is Nibiru. That is the place of the crossing, the star at the top. That's where the sky opens up. Down at the bottom, you have what looks like this is our world, and then that's the entrance into the earth right below it. So right below that opening in the sky is an opening in our world. All right, so back to Bernie. Bernie's like, I'm going to show you a magic trick. I'm going to take two of these magical flowers, right, that transport people or teleport people, which represent real places in our world. Keep that in mind. There's more than one. He says, now, I place the object between the two time flowers and utter the magic words, and boom, look what he's done, right? He's created an electrical arc between these two time flowers that represent real places in our world. Let me make it a little smaller for you, right? In the middle, you have the snake hat, which represents the blue beam of light or life, right? The Hermes snake, etc., right? And they create an electrical arc over the center of it. This is representative of what happens at the North Pole. These anode and cathode mountains, or plasma volcanoes, when they shoot up their electricity, they form an electrical arc that goes over the North Pole island, right? Protecting it, covering it, essentially, and sort of almost trapping things inside of it or keeping things outside of it as well. And then in the middle would be the blue beam of Mount Meru. Presto changeo, koala dingo, and poof. Boom, he puts it right in the middle. You can see that the electricity starts to turn blue in the middle, just like the blue beam that I make reference to quite often, right? And then boom, it disappears. Why? Because that's the portal. That's the place you go. Between this mountain, symbolically, this flower represents a mountain, which is a magnetic mountain, which I've shown people on the old maps too. They actually have them. And this is the other one on the other side of the island. They create the electrical arc and boom, things disappear, right? It'll be back in 3, 2, 1, and poof, it comes back again. And he says, a magician never reveals his secrets. And then the dodo goes right into telling you exactly how it's done. The dodo is not stupid. I don't know where we got that from, but basically, just because it's extinct doesn't mean it's stupid. The dodo says the merging of the time flowers causes an extremely powerful arc that disassembles the atoms of an item and then sends them into a time loop, then reassembles the item at a different point in time. That's very interesting because it kind of reminds me of that movie about the magicians that were sort of dueling each other in real life. And one of them hired Tesla to create this machine that would like teleport him, but it really like copied all of his DNA and made a copy of him. That's kind of what that reminds me of too. All right. Anyways, he goes, magic, right? That's just what we say when people don't understand. Ooh, it's just entertaining, right? On second thought, a Great Wall. They take you to the Great Wall of China, and there's all of these sky flowers, they call them, or fireworks in the sky. And I believe fireworks also usually during the winter solstice or the summer solstice or a couple of weeks after those points, people light these fireworks to celebrate that they have made it and the apocalypse did not come. And he says, what are they? She goes, sky flowers. This is symbolic, especially this one right here. Okay. This is symbolic of what you see when the stars fall in streaks, in pink streaks from the skies during the apocalypse. Because what it is that electromagnetic shield is gone away during the neutral point, which allows the plasma to break in through all of the little craters and stuff up there, or all of the weak points. So every place where there should be a star, you actually see that point emit little dragons or little sky worms, or it looks like the stars are like falling and streaming downwards because that electricity is coming our way to ground itself. All right, so she says sky flowers, and then they end up back where the Ernest Shackleton expedition is, and they make a huge point about this. So if you're interested, it's an interesting read. I would definitely check it out. I didn't even tell you what my theory was, so let me tell you my theory. I believe that many of these people, especially when they're funded by the government or the kings or queens, I believe that they're looking for ways out. I believe they're looking for entrances into the hollow recesses of the earth or other places, and that they just tell us all, oh, we're just exploring. That's it. We're just seeing what's out there, with no direction, no points or anything. No, they're following the legends, just like I am. They're following the myths, they're following the legends, they're following the stories, and they send people who are rich enough, they just buy a team and they send them out because it's dangerous, right? Or it can be. All right, anyways. So this girl Flemmel goes back to her point in time to try to warn the other Flemmels that the apocalypse is imminent. So what do we hear before the apocalypse is imminent? We hear the trumpets of God, which is exactly what she does symbolically. She blows on this conch shell, however you say it, and it's like a horn that goes off, and it gets everybody's attention. They all stop dancing in this crystal cave that they're in, which, by the way, is also symbolic elements of this are picked up in my research of this crystal cave concept. All right. Wherever you have high electrical discharge areas, you're probably going to have various crystals and rubies and precious gems and stuff and gold and all kinds of stuff. This is the cave of wonders. This is the cave of treasures, right? And it's empty right now because there's no plasma filling it up or anything like that. But that plasma is what helps to create those precious gems. It's also why Oz is the Emerald City, and there's all these crystals everywhere and stuff. You see a lot of that symbolism. And she says, I just returned from the future. She blows the horn to warn everybody and says, our entire species is about to stop existing. We're all about to go extinct. People are not listening. Just like they won't listen now until they hear that horn blow. She goes, that means die. Do I have to spell this out for you? I can relate to this. She says, everyone. Oh, and then the leader turns around. It's like, everyone, I promise you, this is just, she's joking, right? So that's what happens. Our leaders, when they hear people talking about a cyclical apocalyptic event that happens to our world, right, that decimates populations and buildings and leaves everything's in ruins, and entire cultures and civilizations are just gone. Nobody knows where they went or how they disappeared or anything. You always have the leaders right before that going, no, none of this is true. Come on, you guys don't want to believe that. That means you'll have to change your life. And it's pretty comfy, right? So the movie's accurately reflecting real life. So the dog gets up and says, oh, they most certainly are in trouble. Now remember, this dog represents royalty. This dog represents those who are related to those fallen beings that came down a long time ago and set themselves up as royalty. So the dog says they are in trouble. And the dog would know because he's the keeper of these secrets, right? Or the god, the dog, etc. I don't know did I actually get it? I didn't get it. But dog is actually dag, if you want to pronounce it that way. It's dog, and it means fish. Well, it's interesting that they named a fish that because it actually means shiny. I think I did take some pictures, so we'll go over that here in just a bit. So he says, they are in trouble from me. So these are the people who would be against humanity, essentially. And he blows up their cave, and the ceiling falls down and traps them all inside of this cave. And he says, okay, so she might have been telling the truth about being in danger. That's the only time people tend to believe, is when they see it with their own eyes, when they see it actually happening. But guess what? In the world we live in, stuff like this will happen. The sky will fall, and people will refuse. There will be lots of people that still will not believe it. They're looking for some explanation instead of just believing what their eyes are experiencing and seeing. And then they go back to all these different times or points in time where this little white Fantazoid dog creature, royalty, was like, there during significant events. They show this one, which I also think is BS. Doesn't that look dangerous? Okay, I know that we are taught that this happened. I do not think that this happened. I'm not convinced. I can't imagine any rational person going out and just attaching a key to a kite in a lightning storm and hoping that it gets hit by lightning. This looks like a bad idea. So I'm not convinced, and I don't know. I just wanted to say that. That's all. They go back to ancient Egypt. You can see there's a little glyph of them up there. And then they're like included in the terracotta army, which some people think are real people who just became petrified. It's a possibility. You know what else they could be? They could be in preparation to bring things to life, because they do say that man was created from clay or mud. So think about that. If the plasma was reintroduced, invigorating everything and bringing during the plasma apocalypse. I'm super sorry. I hope we're not skipping or anything. I feel like I've seen the video skip a couple of times. If so, I'm sorry about that. All right. The movie's almost over. Let's finish things up. So he finds a flummel and he's like, oh, aren't they cute? And the dog's pissed because the dog wants to be the center of attention, right? The dog has been replaced. This happens in our world. The dog represents those fallen angels, those fallen beings or whatever, and they lose their attention over time. People fall out of love with them, right? So they develop a grudge, or this dog develops a grudge in the movie. And he says, I'm a bad guy. So he straight up tells you he's the bad guy. He locks one of the flummels to a tree and says, Tata, Tata. The reason we say that, it's directly related to tet, tot, that same word that we were referencing earlier. And it had various meanings because of how that island, the Tet Island, or the island at the North Pole, and therefore its inhabitants, how they acted in a similar fashion was described and picked up in our languages. So for example, Tata is just Tet. And it means goodbye because the Tet, or those of the Tet, were travelers. They were people who always left. They were explorers, okay? Until eventually everything was explored and they started to settle down or whatever, but they are known to be wanderers, right? That just wandered about. Those are those of the Tet, or the Tot, I should say. Those from this island. And so you would say Tata, meaning like, by extension, you know, you're the Tet. You're somebody that runs away. You're somebody that takes off, basically. Oh, especially during the plasma apocalypse, there's another connection here, right? Because there are many native stories and creation stories worldwide that talk about how these beings, humanoids, emerged from the inner earth during some sort of an apocalyptic event. And they were given a celestial message, a divine message to go back to that place. So before the apocalypse, you will see these people that have this spark, I guess I would call it, who have a spirit memory to go back. And there's an exodus and people start traveling and they leave and they go back to a safe place. Anyways, so they're seen as people who leave because they're scared of the apocalypse. And so people make fun of them. Oh, you're scared, blah, blah, blah. But then the apocalypse happens and guess who's laughing then? All right, so we go back to the doctor. Check this out. This gets super interesting. He says, today I'm visiting one of my heroes, the great explorer, Zheng He. Zheng He. This is super interesting. Let's check out this guy. He says he created one of the first nautical maps ever. That's true. Let's check out his nautical map, shall we? Land at the North Pole. This is Zheng He's nautical map that he's referencing right now. And if you zoom in and look at the top of the world, you've got islands separated by these rivers. He included the North Pole land on his map as well. And it's referenced in this movie once again. The North Pole is referenced all over the place. She's tied to the tree. She writes onto the rock for posterity, we were flummels. Okay? So the plasma was here is basically how I translate that. This is what I see. This message, okay, is what I see when I look at nearly every single petroglyph I have ever seen. Basically, all the spirals, all the word stick figures and stuff, it might as well, in my mind, it reads as this. It says we were flummels. It says the plasma was here, that there was cosmic plasmic events and people wrote it down so it wouldn't be forgotten. All right, so she's stuck to this tree. Luckily, she's got all these little crab friends, these little red guys with many, many arms and legs, and they're working on the combination to release her. Symbolically, this is the red plasma tentacles around our world working day and night to figure out the combination to try to get in, basically. That's how I interpret that. Now, the dog goes back in time, finds a cyclops, brings it back to fight the flummels, and he says, in case you were wondering if ancient Greek monsters are real, they were. Not as in a joke in the movie like, they were real, but I'm a dog and I killed them because I don't like ancient Greek monsters or whatever. No. Hollywood is telling you point blank, monsters are real. And the myths and the legends of ancient Greek lore are real. So, the monster, the cyclops, which means cycle, ops, which means cycle or cyclical or circular, right? Ops, we already learned, means eye, so round eye. Not that this was a creature. Now we have to take everything with a grain of salt, okay? There may have been a giant that only had one eye. That's totally feasible, right? But it also... Hey, irregular. Thank you. I appreciate you, man. Thank you. So anyways, so this guy is doing the Atlas symbol, right? He's holding up the sky symbolically. And at the top of that stick figure is one eye, sometimes with a tongue coming out of it. If it's a hole in the sky, it's plasma coming out. It's seen as like plasma coming out. That's why they stick out their tongue so much and do the one eye symbolism and stuff. Excuse me. But let's confirm. He's holding up an ice cream truck that has all these little snow things. Basically, he's holding up something cold, something frozen. That is the sky, okay? It's the ice dome or the barrier of the sky itself, and he's holding it up. And they're showing you this all happening and going down symbolically at an island that represents the North Pole. And then this guy starts making fun of him because they want him to throw stuff at him because they want him to pick up all the rocks and release the flummels. So they start making fun of him. They say, hey, noodle arms, noodly, noodly. Well, he does have noodle arms, right? If this represents plasma and that Atlas is up there, he's waving around. You know what I mean? He's bending back and forth and his arms are plasma moving about in the wind. So he calls them noodle arms. The Cyclops starts throwing the rocks at them, which is also interesting because the Cyclops' name is Greg in the movie, and Greg is directly related to George, and George basically means one who moves the earth or shapes the earth, an earth tiller. Oh, Val, thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you, Val. So Greg is a mover of the earth or a terraformer, right? Which plasma does when it comes down into our world. Man, it terraforms all over the place and changes our geography quite quickly. So this guy's literally terraforming and he's taking the rocks and he's throwing them and moving them about until they all move and fall down, releasing the flummels. The leader of the flummels says, I spent a lot of my cave time thinking about you two. And he gives them a big old hug, which I love, happy endings. And then they start talking about future things. Like these two start talking about the future. They're using futuristic words that the other ones don't understand. So listen to the words that they caught that they don't understand. He goes, movie. They have no idea what a movie is. Man, movie, man, save. They repeat these words. Movie, man, save. Movie, man, save. It could have been any words. It was those specific three words. Movie, the movies that we're watching that have all this truth hidden inside of them are trying or designed to help save man or mankind. That there are breadcrumbs, that there are truth in the movies. All right. So he says, wait, I know what that means, and it's good. And this guy's always like kind of pointing to everybody. He has no idea what's going on. And it's good. It is good, right? Some people like to demonize Hollywood and demonize the movies, and I'm sure there's a bad side to it, but I believe in balance, and I believe that there's a good side, and there's truth to be learned everywhere. I don't think that anyone could help it. The truth is everywhere. All right. So the dodo says, what do you think I am? A dodo, right? Maybe this isn't actually a dodo, right? Maybe the dodo looked a little bit different. I know we have some pictures and stuff, but maybe the dodo wasn't some dumb bird, right? Maybe it was a huge dinner and we went and hunted them all like we do turkeys or something. You know what I mean? Anyways, so the dodo takes off. Basically the dodo is, they're saying in Hollywood, like, hey, the dodo wasn't a stupid bird, but we have made it that. So the Cyclops will throw us to the time flower, What that means is the blue beam will get you to the Sipapu in the sky, or the transitional point, or Nibiru, the place of the crossing, and will take everyone through it before the bomb goes off, right? So imagine you're under the red sky of our world. There's blue beams all over the place, right? And you get to the North Pole blue beam, and you ride Atlas up to the top where the hole is in the sky, or the flower in the sky, before the bomb goes off, which means before the depressurization event, so that you can escape. They're literally teaching you how to get out of the world, right? So the dog comes up with these 4 tets. Those are tets right there. The same symbol we were talking about earlier. And he's trying to stop them. They're carrying one of these time flowers, and he says, "Drop it, Fruit Loops." Well, it's funny because there's a cereal called Fruit Loops, but they are actually representative of the fruit of the gods, how we mentioned earlier. Now, he remembers the trick of making the electrical arc. So they take 2 time flowers. They're like, great, now we have 3 of them. So they have 3 time flowers, which all represent the mountains, the magnetic mountains that shoot out the inner earth energy, creating this electrical arc. So that's exactly what they do. They create an electrical arc between these 2 flowers, with the biggest flower, the biggest opening that leads down into the inner earth in between them. This causes this vortex to appear that starts to turn blue, which is the blue beam, or whatever you want to call it. I just call it the blue beam, right? You can call it other things if you see it differently. And they're showing you in cartoons symbolically what happens at the top of our world. There's these 2 holes that have plasma that shoot out from them, creating an electrical arc because they want to touch one another. They're positive and negative as an anode and a cathode. They create an electrical arc over the island that has the inner earth entrance to it. And out of that comes the stick body of the stick figure, squatter man figure that's on all of the petroglyphs and whatnot, right? And then this creates a huge vortex as you go through the plasma apocalypse. That blue stuff is spreading everywhere. I don't know if you can see the blue veins that are going through the world. This rejuvenates our world and brings us back to paradise, brings us back to the golden age. Now, we go to modern times. There's no island there or anything. But after this apocalyptic event, like I said, it terraforms. Right? The plasma terraforms. So now all of a sudden in the movie, it's seen as, they teleported the whole island or whatever. But in reality, symbolically and esoterically, they're showing you that mountains spring up out of nowhere quickly during this apocalyptic event because the plasma reaches down negatively charged. All of the positive ions in the earth are attracted to it. So it pulls dirt and mud and everything right up into the air until it hits. And once it hits, it creates the circuit and the electricity charges through it and it petrifies. And it solidifies, and your mountain is formed. Boom. Didn't take millions of years. So these guys watch this this island just appear out of nowhere, and one guy dumps his alcohol. The other guy starts to drink his alcohol. And then in the past, the same thing had happened, but it's reversed. Now he's dumping his alcohol, and he's drinking his alcohol. Symbolically, this means that after this event happens, everything is reversed. As you can see, it's all reversed and everything becomes the opposite. That's why you feel like you live in the upside down right now, because everything is upside down. The energy is reversed right now. Some of us carry a spark that has an energy signature that is an opposite energy of that of the world at large. So when the energy flips, you're going to feel right at home. You're going to feel like it's a better place to be, or at least that's my theory on that. All right, so the dodo and the little boy Flummel fall in love with each other for some reason. I don't know why. And they start making out, right? And it's awkward and this is the only like semi-inappropriate part. However, I will tell you that it's absolutely relevant. Why is it relevant? Because the second the apocalypse happens and our world is reinvigorated, so will you be. Okay, you ever wonder why all of the gods and stories of old had so many promiscuous people that were all over the place with their promiscuity? Okay, I'm trying to be careful about how I talk about these things, but they're amplified. Okay, their energy is on charge. Their energy is on high alert. So, it reciprocates physically. Anyways, so we get back to Bernie. He goes, "I was right about the flowers and the Cyclops. What else am I right about?" He's asking you. He's already shown you all the different ideas that he's had. So he's asking the viewer to reconsider the fact that the movie portrays him, because every time in the movie he comes up with some crazy conspiracy idea, somebody goes, Bernie, right? Like, how do you interpret that? I interpret that as Bernie, they're not going to get that. Don't talk about that because they're not advanced enough to understand it. Or you can see it as, oh, Bernie, you're totally crazy. And that's just a stupid idea, right? I don't think so because he's been right. The conspiracy guy or animal has been right all along in this movie. And he says, what else have I been right about? So maybe rewind a bit when you have time and go back and look at all of his different theories he's had. So as we can see, it's now the modern time. The island appears in the modern day, and we've got all of these extinct creatures that have reappeared out of nowhere. The cyclopses or giants, the Fantazoid type creatures and monsters, otherworldly animals, heavenly animals, the flummels themselves have reappeared. And that means that all of these things symbolically will come back around. There's nothing new under the sun. Everything that has happened, everything that was a reality will be a reality, right? We live in these spirals and loops that happen over and over. So the dog gets stuck back in Antarctica and he's trying to tell these other dogs that are totally subservient to their master, right? Like they're born to be slaves. They love their master and they'll do whatever they say. They don't even care that they have collars. They don't care that they're in the ice. They don't know about the rest of the world. They're happy right where they are. And the little puppy says, no dog should have a master. I say we tie up Shackleton, take his ship, and head somewhere like Cabo. And now this is like our world, okay? Imagine you're this little puppy and you've got a little piece of the truth and you're trying to talk to the rest of the world, all the slaves, all the robots, all the soulless people walking around bumping into walls as they traverse the labyrinth unknowingly. They don't want to know the truth. They are comfy right there on the ice following their master. They know their place, right? They don't want to know that there's other places. That scares them. So what do? They get pissed. They get angry. They're like, you're not one of us. You're different. Anything different needs to be destroyed because that's the energy signature of those that don't have the spark. Okay? They have another spark. They have another energy signature, and theirs is to destroy. So we've got kind of two sides going on with a neutral party, or neutral anomalies, I should say, in the middle. And basically, because they had kissed for a brief moment, the dodo and the gray flummel had a baby. And there's a little baby egg over here almost instantaneously, which is also kind of interesting because I have a theory and I wonder about this, that after the apocalypse happens and our world is reinvigorated with electromagnetic energy, I have a strong feeling and inclination based on research and experience and all kinds of other things that the plasma rejuvenates, right? If you're old, it will turn you young. It will rejuvenate your skin. It will revitalize. It'll make everything younger and live longer, etc., right? So what happens if somebody gets pregnant? Do they still take 9 long months agonizing and there's pain and stuff? Or is pregnancy different too? Does life grow faster and stronger and better in the womb? And so maybe babies come out quicker and maybe they come out older. I always thought it was weird that humans, if you watch humans being born, I've seen a human being born. It's a great moment. It's a proud moment. But they're not born like many animals are, where they're like, okay, whoa, where am I? Whoa. They're trying to get their bearings. They can talk. You know what I mean? Or ish, they can sort of communicate. Nah, humans, when they're born, are helpless. I don't even know, how do we get this far? This blows my mind. Humans come out, they're noodles. They're a little weak. They can't move their head or anything. You know what I mean? There's something weird about that. Maybe there was a time when we didn't do that. Maybe there was a time when we were born advanced when we came out of the womb. Much like the story of Noah in the book of Enoch. Excuse me. So the egg starts to crack open. And the girl says, don't worry, Ed. I'm sure you have plenty of time to prepare before. And then the egg starts to crack. And they're all waiting. Plenty of time to prepare for what? And then they show you this eye. They show you this circle. They show you this hole that's made out of an egg that's cracking. And that's our world. Cracking open, getting ready. They're saying to you, if you think you have plenty of time to prepare before the apocalypse comes, because it's been so long since the last one, that's usually when it sneaks up on you and you go extinct. that was the movie for today. I hope you all enjoyed it. I see a lot of people in the chat. I hope you have a great rest of your night. I'm going to go ahead and just roll the credits. Oh, Coriander, thank you for the donation. I super appreciate it, everybody. I can't wait to go over the chat later on when the video is uploaded and to read all of your comments. I'm really excited about this one. But I'm going to roll the credits right now. I'm going to also play a 24-hour or an all weekend long live stream of some of my greatest hits of ancient Oblivion and the concepts that I present, mostly so that new people can check it out and become acquainted with all of these weird topics and subjects that I bring up during Truth in Movies, my Plasma Apocalypse series, etc. And also to provide a chat for everybody to just jump in when you're bored, hang out, talk to some people, meet some new people or something, and have a good time. Until next time, I'm JayDreamerZ saying good vibes and goodbye.
So hard to fade away. I try so hard to fade away, but something's forcing me to stay. It'd be easier for me if I turn away to flee. Oh, but there's something holding on, the way of being long gone. There's so many ways to escape, but I guess it's time to wake up, time to wake up. Far too many ways to escape, but I guess it's time to wake up, time to wake up. Time to wake up, time to wake up, baby. Time to wake up, time to wake up. Time to wake up, time to wake up, baby. Time to wake up, time to wake up. I know I should have done this, should have quit this long ago. Can't stand another heartbreak, but it's time to let it go. It'd be easier for me if I turn away to flee. Oh, but there's something holding on, the way of being long gone. There's so many ways to escape, but I guess it's time to wake up, time to wake up. Far too many ways to escape, but I guess it's time to wake up, time to wake up. Time to wake up, time to wake up, baby. Time to wake up, time to wake up. Time to wake up, time to wake up, baby. Time to wake up, time to wake There's so many ways to escape, but I guess it's time to wake up, time to wake up. Far too many ways to escape, but I guess it's time to wake up, time to wake up. Time to wake up, time to wake up, baby. Time to wake up, time to wake up. Time to wake up, time to wake up, baby. Time to wake up, time to wake up.
Are you in this vast multiverse?